San Diego, California. November 5th, 1989. It was just before dawn when the sound of gunfire ripped through a quiet suburban home. Inside, prominent attorney Daniel Broderick and his new wife, Linda Kolkena, were shot dead as they slept. The shooter? A woman who had once been Dan's devoted wife of 16 years and the mother of his 4 children, Elizabeth Ann Betty Broderick. This shocking case would not only expose the bitter collapse of a high-profile marriage, but also spark national debate about love, betrayal, obsession, and justice. This is the Betty Broderick story. Betty Broderick was born Elizabeth Ann Biseglia on November 7, 1947, in Eastchester, New York. She grew up in a large, strict Catholic family. Her parents emphasized traditional values, hard work, obedience, and family loyalty. Betty, by all accounts, was bright, attractive, and ambitious. In 1965, she enrolled at the College of Mount St. Vincent in the Bronx, majoring in early childhood education. It was there, at a college football game, that she met Daniel Broderick, a charismatic young medical student from Pittsburgh. Dan came from a working-class background, but was fiercely ambitious. He dreamed of wealth, success, and respect. Betty and Dan married in April 1969, when she was just 21 years old. Their relationship quickly fell into traditional gender roles. Betty became a full-time homemaker, while Dan pursued higher education. He first attended Cornell Medical School, but later switched to law at Harvard, believing a legal career would give him faster access to wealth and influence. During these years, Betty worked multiple jobs, teaching, babysitting, even selling Avon products to support them financially while raising their growing family. By the late 1970s, Dan had established himself as a powerful malpractice attorney in San Diego. The Brodericks lived in La Jolla, an affluent neighborhood, enjoying country club memberships, vacations, and social prestige. To the outside world, they looked like the perfect American success story, but behind closed doors, cracks were forming. Dan's long work hours, coupled with his growing arrogance and Betty's role as the overlooked homemaker, began to strain their relationship. In 1983, Betty suspected Dan of having an affair with his young legal assistant, 21-year-old Linda Kolkena. Dan denied it for years, but by 1985, the truth was undeniable. Dan left Betty, and their divorce proceedings began. What followed was one of the most bitter, drawn-out divorces in California history. Dan was at the height of his legal power. He knew the system inside out. Betty, on the other hand, felt powerless. For years, she accused Dan of manipulating the courts, withholding money, and using his influence to ruin her life. She claimed he wanted to make her seem unstable so he could maintain custody of their children and control the family's fortune. Betty's behavior, meanwhile, became increasingly erratic. She left angry, obscene messages on Dan's answering machine. She spray-painted his house. On one occasion, she drove her car into his front door. Dan gained custody of the children, while Betty felt isolated and discarded. She later said, "He was gaslighting me. He wanted me gone." By 1989, Dan had married Linda. Betty, still enraged, saw the union as a final humiliation. On November 5, 1989, Betty used a key she had stolen from her daughter to enter Dan's home at 5:30 in the morning. She carried a revolver. Inside, Dan and Linda were asleep in their bedroom. Betty entered quietly, pulled out the gun, and fired 5 shots. 2 bullets struck Linda in the chest and head, killing her instantly. 1 bullet hit Dan in the chest. He reached for the phone, but Betty yanked it away. He bled to death within minutes. Betty later surrendered to police, admitting she had killed them, but claiming she never intended to murder, only to confront them. She said, "I just wanted him to listen to me." But the facts were clear. Both Dan and Linda were dead. Betty's first trial in 1990 ended with a hung jury. The defense argued she was a battered woman, emotionally destroyed by Dan's manipulation and abuse. The prosecution insisted it was cold-blooded murder. At her second trial in 1991, the jury convicted Betty of 2 counts of second-degree murder. She was sentenced to 32 years to life in prison. The case divided the nation. Some saw her as a victim of emotional abuse, driven beyond reason. Others saw her as a jealous, vindictive killer who couldn't let go. Her children, too, were torn. Some sympathized with her pain. Others could not forgive her for killing their father. Betty Broderick has remained behind bars ever since. She has been denied parole multiple times, as recently as 2017, with the board citing her lack of remorse. She insists she was a victim of Dan's power and cruelty. Today, she resides at the California Institution for Women in Chino. She is 77 years old and still serving her sentence. The Betty Broderick case continues to fascinate the public because it is about more than just murder. It is about love, betrayal, anger, and the limits of control. It asks hard questions. When does heartbreak turn into obsession? How far should anger be allowed to go? And what happens when the legal system fails to protect both partners in a collapsing marriage? Betty Broderick's story is a tragic reminder of how quickly a once perfect family can spiral into destruction. And now we ask you, if you were in Betty's position, betrayed, abandoned, and feeling powerless, what would you have done? Would you have walked away? Or would anger have consumed you too?